The refusal at the border. The twin suns of the alien world burned low across the horizon, painting the sky with strange orange light. The border checkpoint stood like a silver wall, shining but cold. Alien guards moved with discipline, their armor glowing faintly. Among them was Officer Lyra, known for her sharp eyes and strict heart. She never trusted outsiders, and humans were at the top of her dislike. That evening, a lone human walked up to the gate. His name was Jake Mercer. He wore a dark jacket, dusty from travel, and carried a single duffel bag slung over his shoulder. His steps were steady, his face calm, but his eyes showed the weight of many long journeys. The guards raised their weapons. Lyra stepped forward, her expression hard. "Stop right there, human," she ordered. "This border is closed to your kind. State your business." Jake stopped, standing tall, but respectful. His voice was even, not begging, not proud. "I bring medical supplies," he said, holding the bag slightly higher. "People in your lower districts are sick. They need this medicine." Lyra narrowed her eyes. To her, humans were cunning tricksters, always finding ways to sneak in and cause trouble. She looked at the bag with suspicion. "You expect me to believe that?" she said coldly. "A human carrying medicine for our people?" "No, you are lying. Perhaps weapons, perhaps poison." Jake did not flinch. His voice stayed calm. "I am not lying. I only want to help. There are children in pain. Let me through." Her lips curved into a mocking smile. She wanted to break his calm, to prove her own superiority. Around her, the other guards chuckled, watching like it was a game. "You think you are some kind of hero?" she said loudly so the others could hear. "Humans are weak. Humans are trouble. We do not need you here." The other guards laughed. One muttered, "Look at him, so fragile. He would not survive one night past these walls." Jake listened, but did not respond with anger. He only stood there silent, his hand gripping the strap of his bag. His calmness made Lyra uneasy, but she masked it with more arrogance. She stepped closer, her face inches from his. "Listen, human," she whispered with venom. "You will turn around now. Go back to whatever dust hole you came from. You are not welcome here." Jake looked into her eyes, not with hate, but with quiet strength. "Someday," he said softly, "you will understand why I came." His words unsettled her. For a moment her heart skipped, though she did not know why. She pushed the feeling aside and raised her hand in a gesture of dismissal. "Guards, remove him," she ordered, but Jake did not resist. He turned around on his own and began walking, back down the dusty road. His figure grew smaller with every step, his bag swinging lightly at his side. To the guards, it looked like defeat. To Lyra, it felt like something else. Something she could not name. The checkpoint grew quiet again. The laughter faded. Lyra stood still, staring at the horizon where the human had disappeared. She told herself it was nothing. She told herself she had done the right thing. Yet her chest felt strangely heavy. Then, without warning, the silence was broken. A deep alarm blared across the checkpoint, red lights flashing against the silver walls. The ground trembled faintly as shadows moved in the distance. The guards rushed to their posts, weapons raised. Lyra barked orders, her voice strong, but her mind was not calm anymore. She felt a cold knot of fear twist inside. Shapes appeared, through the dust. Not travelers, not traders, smugglers. Dangerous gangs who thrived on violence and fear. Their weapons glowed with stolen power. Their vehicles roared like beasts. They were moving fast toward the border. Lyra's heart pounded. She looked at her squad, good soldiers but unprepared for such an attack. The smugglers had more men, more weapons, more cruelty. For the first time in years, doubt touched her. And then a thought struck her. The human, the one she had mocked. He was still nearby, walking the same road. Did he know what was coming? Would he run? The smugglers drew closer, their shouts cutting through the air. The checkpoint shook as the first blast hit the walls. Sparks flew. The soldiers stumbled. Lyra gritted her teeth and raised her blade. "Hold the line," she shouted. But deep inside she felt the weight of her decision. She had sent away the one person who had stood calm, the one who had carried no weapon but spoke with steady courage. She had dismissed him as weak. Now, as fire and chaos erupted at the border, a silent question burned inside her. Had she just pushed away the very hand that could save them all? Shadows of danger. The first blast shook the silver walls of the checkpoint. Dust and sparks flew into the air as alien soldiers scrambled for cover. Lyra's sharp voice cut through the chaos, shouting orders, but even she felt the ground slipping from under her control. The smugglers were ruthless. Their weapons fired bolts of blue fire that cracked against the defenses. The checkpoint was strong but not built for this kind of attack. Lyra's squad raised their rifles and fired back. Bright flashes lit the night sky. Screams and roars filled the desert wind. The smugglers advanced with no fear, their armored vehicles crushing the sand like thunder. For the first time, Lyra felt true dread. She had faced raiders before, but never in such numbers. These men were different. They moved with deadly purpose, like predators hunting prey. And the prey was her and her soldiers. Her mind raced back to the human, Jake Mercer. She had dismissed him, mocked him, laughed at his calm words. Yet now, as the walls shook under the pressure of fire, she wondered, why did he not run? A man like him, calm under insult, might not be the kind who runs when danger comes. Far away on the dusty road, Jake heard the sounds of war behind him. Explosions cracked through the quiet air, and smoke rose against the strange orange sky. He stopped walking. His hand tightened on the strap of his duffel bag. He knew what was happening. Smugglers. He had seen their kind before on other worlds. Violent, merciless, leaving nothing but ruin. He could walk away, he told himself. He owed nothing to those who had laughed at him. But in his heart he knew he could not. Not when lives hung in the balance. Not when even the officer who hated him was about to face death. Jake turned back. His footsteps quickened. His eyes hardened with purpose. Back at the checkpoint, Lyra tried to hold the line. Her soldiers fired in desperation. One after another, the smugglers broke through their defenses. A blast tore a hole in the outer wall. Lyra drew her blade, leading a charge to push them back, but the enemy was too strong. The smugglers moved like a storm, their weapons brutal, their shouts filled with hunger for blood. One soldier fell, then another. The checkpoint began to collapse into chaos. Lyra swung her blade against a raider, striking him down, but her arms shook with exhaustion. She looked around. Too many enemies, too much fire. Her heart pounded in her chest. For the first time in her career, she thought, "We will not survive this." Then it happened. A shadow moved through the smoke. Quiet, precise, like a hunter. A figure slipped inside the battle without fear. It was Jake. His jacket burned at the edges from sparks, but his eyes were steady, his body low and controlled. He struck the first smuggler with sudden force, knocking the weapon from his hands. The alien guard beside him gasped in shock. Jake moved again, faster than expected, dodging a bolt of fire and slamming another raider into the ground. Lyra froze for a moment. Her heart skipped as she recognized him. The same human she had refused, the same human she had mocked. Now he stood in the fire, moving with the skill of a trained fighter. "Impossible," she whispered. Jake did not look at her. He fought, with focus, his every move calculated. He had no advanced weapon, only his fists, a small knife, and the strength of his training. But against overwhelming odds, he made every strike count. The soldiers, shocked by his courage, found new strength. They followed his lead, pushing back with sudden energy. For the first time since the battle began, the smugglers faltered. Lyra raised her blade again, her voice louder now. "Fight. Do not let them through." The checkpoint roared with renewed fire. But the battle was far from over. The smugglers pulled, back for a moment, regrouping behind their armored vehicles. Their leader stepped forward, a tall brute with scars across his face. His voice boomed like thunder. "Kill them all! Leave no survivors!" Jake heard it and narrowed his eyes. He knew this was only the beginning. The smugglers were preparing something worse. He could feel it in the air, the tension, the silence before a storm. Lyra stood beside him, breathing hard. She looked at Jake, the human she had scorned, now covered in dust and blood, fighting for lives that were not even his own. She could not stop herself from asking, her voice trembling with disbelief. Why are you doing this? Jake wiped the sweat from his brow, his gaze never leaving the enemy lines. Because, he said, his voice low but firm, mercy means nothing if you only show it to your own people. Mercy matters when you give it to those who hate you. Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. His words struck deeper than any blade. Before she could answer, the smugglers roared again and launched their next wave. Explosions lit the sky. Walls cracked, screams echoed. The checkpoint was drowning in fire and fear. And at the center of it all stood a lone human, calm and unbroken, ready to face the storm. The human's intervention, the smuggler's leader raised his hand, and a new wave of attackers stormed forward. Their weapons glowed, spraying fire across the checkpoint. The silver walls cracked under the assault, and alien soldiers stumbled. Back in panic, Lyra gritted her teeth, her chest tight with fear. She had seen many battles, but never had she felt so close to losing everything. Her squad was breaking. Some soldiers screamed, some dropped their weapons. The enemy was too strong. But in the center of the chaos, one figure refused to break. Jake Mercer moved like a man born for war. His body bent low, his movements sharp, his eyes burning with focus. He did not carry alien guns or heavy armor, yet he fought with a strength that shocked everyone who saw him. A smuggler raised his blaster. Jake darted to the side, grabbed the attacker's arm, and twisted it with brutal precision. The weapon fell, and before the smuggler could scream, Jake struck him across the face and sent him crashing into the sand. Another enemy came from behind, swinging a blade. Jake spun, catching the weapon with his bare hands. The blade cut his palm, blood dripping, but he did not let go. With one swift motion, he drove his knee into the raider's stomach and threw him down. The alien guards watched in disbelief. The human they had mocked now fought like 10 men, his body moving faster than their eyes could follow. Lyra stared, her breath caught in her throat. She remembered how she had laughed at him. She remembered calling him weak, fragile, unworthy. Yet here he was, fighting like a warrior of legend, saving her people when he had every reason to walk away. Her pride cracked like glass. Still, the enemy was relentless. The smuggler's leader stepped forward, raising a heavy cannon. He aimed, directly at Lyra, who stood exposed, blade raised but useless against such fire. Time slowed. Lyra's heart pounded. She knew she could not dodge it. She would die here at the border she swore to protect. Then a blur of motion. Jake leapt in front of her, throwing his duffel bag aside. The cannon fired. The blast slammed into him, knocking him to the ground. Smoke rose from his jacket, his body shuddering with pain. "Jake!" Lyra's voice broke, sharp with shock. She dropped to her knees beside him. For the first time, her eyes burned with fear, not for herself, but for someone she had once despised. But Jake pushed himself up, coughing, blood on his lips. He forced a weak smile. "Still alive," he muttered, his voice rough. Lyra could not believe it. Any other being would be dead from such a hit. Yet this human, wounded and broken, still stood. He picked up his knife, turned to her and said firmly, "Stay behind me." She shook her head. "No, I fight with you." Their eyes met, and for a moment the war around them seemed to fade. Something unspoken passed between them, an understanding, a bond formed in fire. Then the smugglers roared again. The leader raised his cannon for another shot. Jake moved first. He charged, faster than the alien could react. His knife flashed, striking the cannon aside. The blast fired into the ground, exploding in a shower of dirt and smoke. Jake drove his shoulder into the leader's chest, knocking the brute off balance. They clashed, man against monster. The leader swung his fists like hammers, but Jake dodged, countered, struck with precision. Each hit from Jake was not wild but controlled, aimed with deadly skill. The other guards, inspired by his courage, shouted and rushed forward. They fought harder than before, their fear melting into fury. The battle turned. The smugglers began to fall back, shocked that one human could change the fight. Lyra's heart pounded as she cut down an enemy beside Jake. Her blade and his knife moved together, two warriors fighting as one. For the first time, she trusted him completely, but victory was not yet in their hands. The smuggler leader roared in rage, slamming his fist into Jake's side, sending him sprawling across the sand. Jake groaned, clutching his ribs. The leader raised his cannon again, aiming at Jake's chest. Lyra screamed, charging forward to stop it, but she was too far away. The cannon flared. Jake looked up, his eyes calm even in the face of death. And then with a sudden surge of strength, he hurled his knife. The blade spun through the air and struck the leader's arm. The cannon fired wild, the shot exploding into the sky. The leader howled in pain. Jake dragged himself back to his feet, breathing hard, blood dripping from his wounds. His voice carried across the battlefield, low but unshakable. "You will not pass this gate." The smugglers froze. For the first time, they hesitated. They saw not a weak human, but a warrior who refused to fall. Lyra stood beside him, her blade raised, her voice strong. "Stand with him. Fight for your lives." The guards rallied, charging with renewed power. The smugglers stumbled back under the storm of blades and fire. The tide was shifting, but in her heart, Lyra knew this was only the beginning. The smugglers would not stop. And Jake? How long could one man fight against such odds? Her chest ached as she looked at him. Bloodied, broken, but unyielding. The same human she had denied was now the shield that stood between her and death. Truth and redemption. Smoke curled across the broken walls of the checkpoint. The ground was littered with shattered weapons, fallen soldiers, and scorch marks from cannon fire. The air smelled of dust and blood. Lyra stood with her blade still in hand, breathing hard. Her eyes never left the human standing beside her. Jake's jacket was torn, his face streaked with sweat and blood. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, but his eyes, those steady, unyielding eyes, were still fixed on the enemy. She could not understand him. He had no reason to stay. She had insulted him, denied him, treated him like dirt. Yet he had thrown himself into fire to save her life. Why? What kind of strength was this? The smugglers had pulled back, but not far. They regrouped in the desert, preparing for another assault. Their leader shouted orders, his wounded arm wrapped in cloth, his voice filled with rage. They had not been defeated, only slowed. Lyra felt a cold dread. Her squad was broken. Half her soldiers were dead or too injured to fight. The checkpoint's defenses were nearly gone. One more attack and they would all fall. She turned to Jake, her voice trembling but firm. "Human, I do not understand. Why would you risk your life for me? For us? We are not your people." Jake wiped the blood from his lip, his gaze calm, as he answered. "Because mercy is not about who deserves it. It is about who needs it. Your life mattered in that moment. That was enough." His words struck her harder than any weapon. She had grown up believing humans were weak, selfish, untrustworthy. But this man, standing wounded and unarmed, was stronger in spirit than any warrior she had known. Lyra lowered her blade slowly. For the first time, her voice softened. "I was wrong about you." Jake gave no smile, no prideful reply. He only adjusted the strap of his torn duffel bag and looked at the horizon where the smugglers gathered. "Wrong or right doesn't matter now," he said quietly. "What matters is stopping them before they hurt anyone else." Lyra felt her chest tighten. She looked at his bag. "You said you carried medicine. Is that true?" Jake nodded. "For the refugees beyond your city walls. Children are dying." Without it, her throat closed. She had thought him a liar. She had laughed at him. And yet, while she wasted time with pride, Lives had been slipping away. Shame burned inside her like fire. Before she could speak again, a low rumble shook the sand. The smugglers were moving. Their armored vehicles rolled forward, dust rising like a storm. The final attack was coming. Lyra's soldiers looked to her, with fear in their eyes. Some whispered of retreat, others of surrender, but she knew neither would save them. Then she looked at Jake. He stood there, back straight despite his wounds, his knife gripped tight in his hand. He looked like a man ready to face death without hesitation. A strange strength stirred inside her chest. For the first time in years, she felt something more powerful than pride. Hope. She stepped closer to him. "If you will fight," she said firmly, "then I will fight with you. Together." Jake glanced at her, a spark of respect in his eyes. He gave a small nod. The smugglers roared as their assault began. Blaster fire lit the sky. Explosions rocked the ground. Lyra raised her blade high, her voice echoing across the checkpoint. "Soldiers, stand with him. Stand with the human. Fight." Something changed in that moment. The soldiers, broken and afraid, felt courage surge through them. They saw their officer standing not above them, but beside a human she once despised. They saw Jake bleeding, yet still unyielding. And suddenly they believed they could fight again. The battle erupted once more. Fire and steel clashed in the night. Jake and Lyra fought side by side, their movements sharp and united. She covered. His blind side, he shielded her when blasts came too close. Together they carved a path through the chaos. But the smugglers were merciless. Their leader, furious and wounded, swore he would crush them. He raised his cannon, ordering his men to surround the checkpoint completely. The circle closed tighter, trapping Lyra, Jake, and the few soldiers who remained. Lyra's heart pounded. It felt like the end. Then she saw Jake, his stance firm, his eyes calm, even as blood dripped from his side. He turned to her and spoke quietly, so only she could hear. "Listen, if I fall, you must carry the medicine. Don't let it be wasted." Her chest ached at his words. She shook her head fiercely. "No, you will not fall. Not while I still stand." The smugglers advanced, weapons raised. Their leader aimed his cannon directly at the two of them. The checkpoint burned, the soldiers screamed, the world trembled. And yet, in the center of it all, a human and an alien officer stood together, side by side, ready to face death as one. The final storm was coming. Mercy and respect. The desert night burned with fire. Explosions flashed against the dark sky, lighting the silver checkpoint like a broken lantern. The smugglers' vehicles circled closer, their engines growling, their weapons glowing with deadly light. Lyra tightened her grip on her blade. Her arms trembled, but her eyes were steady. Beside her stood Jake Mercer, the human she once mocked, now the man holding the line when everyone else was ready to break. The alien soldiers were exhausted, wounded, and scared. Yet when they saw Lyra standing with Jake, their fear turned into something else. Hope. The smuggler leader stepped forward, towering with rage, his scarred face twisted in hate, his cannon charged with power. He pointed at Jake and shouted, "Kill the human first. Break him and the rest will fall." The raiders roared and surged forward. Jake drew a deep breath. His knife felt small compared to their weapons, but his spirit was unshakable. He moved like a storm, striking fast and sharp. Every motion was precise. A blade knocked aside, a soldier thrown down, a weapon ripped from enemy hands and turned against them. Lyra fought at his side, her blade flashing in the firelight. She had always prided herself on skill, but fighting with Jake was different. His movements were not just strong, they carried purpose. He fought not for glory, not for pride, but to protect, and that gave him a strength beyond measure. Together, they became unstoppable. But the smugglers were too many. Their leader raised his cannon and fired. The blast tore into the wall, throwing soldiers to the ground. Jake dove forward, pulling Lyra out of the fire, his body shielding hers. Pain seared through his side as shrapnel struck him. Blood spilled, staining the sand. Yet even as his body weakened, his grip on his knife did not falter. Lyra looked at him in horror. "You're dying," she whispered. Jake forced a faint smile. "Not yet." The smugglers closed in, their laughter cruel. They saw the human bleeding and believed victory was near. But then something changed. The alien soldiers, who once sneered at humans, saw Jake standing even as his blood poured onto the ground. They saw Lyra fighting at his side, her pride cast aside, her voice shouting courage instead of scorn. And suddenly, their fear broke. One soldier roared and charged. Then another. Then all of them. "For the human," one shouted. "For our people," cried another. The checkpoint exploded with defiance. Blasters fired, blades struck, voices rose in unison. The smugglers, once certain of victory, stumbled back under the wave of resistance. The leader growled in fury. He aimed his cannon at Jake, again determined to end him, but Lyra moved faster. She leapt forward, her blade slicing across the cannon's power core. The weapon sparked, then exploded in the leader's hands. He roared in pain, staggering back. Jake, weak but unbroken, seized the moment. With the last of his strength, he charged. His knife pierced the leader's chest, ending the battle in a single strike. Silence fell. The smugglers froze, their leader collapsing into the sand. Fear replaced their fury. Without another word, they turned and fled into the desert night. The battlefield grew still, broken only by the crackle of fire. Lyra dropped to her knees beside Jake. His body shook with exhaustion, his breath shallow. She pressed her hands against his wound, desperate to keep him alive. "Stay with me," she begged. "You cannot die now. Not after this." Jake's eyes met hers. They were weak, but steady. "The medicine," he whispered. "Take it. Don't let them suffer." Tears burned her eyes. For the first time in her life, Officer Lyra, cold, proud, unyielding, felt her heart break. She shook her head fiercely. "No, you will deliver it. I swear it. You will live." The soldiers gathered around, silent and solemn. For years they had seen humans as weak, but tonight they had witnessed something no weapon or armor could match: courage, mercy, sacrifice. Slowly, Jake's body stilled. His eyes closed, but not in death. He had lost consciousness, but his chest still rose and fell. He had survived. Relief crashed over Lyra like a wave. She looked at the soldiers, her voice firm and filled with new strength. "Carry him inside, treat his wounds. From this day, no one will speak of humans as weak. We owe our lives to this one." The soldiers bowed their heads in respect. As dawn broke over the desert, the silver walls of the checkpoint stood scarred but unbroken. And at the heart of it all was a human who had come with nothing but medicine, yet left behind something far greater: respect. Lyra stood at the gate, watching the sunrise. She whispered to herself, words she had once thought she would never say. "Human, you may enter."